Miles, question for you.
Yeah.
How do celebrities stay cool?
How?
They have many fans. Okay, one more. Why was the color green notoriously single?
Why?
They were always so jaded.
I like it.
Okay. How are you doing, Mr. Miles?
Mr. Miles?
Yeah.
That's new.
I almost said Mr. Miles Mitz, but I didn't want to give away your full name.
Oh,
Even
well, you just did. So.
Even though every person that listens to us already knows your full name.
We can bleep it out. I'm just kidding.
Miles, beep. JK.
No, I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing good. It is spooky season, but it is so freaking windy that we can't have any of our decorations up.
That's really annoying because we put our decorations up, like 2 weeks ago?
Uh-huh.
And we had to take them down because the wind started blowing them away.
Yep.
And
they were so cute.
They were. They looked really good. But
we have like that total, new homeowners, like that rose-colored vision in our eyes of a cute Halloween house, but we can't follow through with it because of the wind.
Stop blowing, you stupid wind.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Hey, you want to know what today is? The day that we are recording.
Yeah.
It is October 22nd. You want to know why that's significant?
Why?
Because we've been podcasting for 1 month.
Woo!
And we still have people listening. So.
Yeah. Most of them are family members,
hey,
but.
It doesn't matter. They're listeners. No, it's awesome. You guys are awesome. And we love you.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, feel free to speak there, sir.
No.
All right, are you ready for my story?
I'm ready.
You were
talking. Yeah, you're talking it up, so I'm ready.
I'm very excited. Fun fact: this story, I've known about this story for a while, and I've thought about covering it, but obviously we're only a month in, so I didn't know when I was going to.
Yeah.
But last month there was a movie released about this subject, and I did not know that until I started researching notes. So it's pretty popular in the media, and I just want to put that out there that it wasn't because of the movie that I did the story. The movie did the movie because they knew I wanted a podcast about it. That's really what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding.
Have we seen this movie?
No.
Okay.
No, but we should. I'm very curious to watch it, and I think you'll be too after I tell you every single detail of the plot.
Is it based on a true story?
Yes.
I'm just kidding. That was a joke. Anyway.
All right, so this is the story of Jane and Jennifer Gibbon.
I don't know anything about them.
Okay, what if I said this is the story of the Silent Twins?
Oh.
Yeah.
I have heard of them.
Yeah, do you know anything about them?
That they were silent.
Yeah.
That they
were twins?
Yeah, they were twins.
Oh, pause. And we are back. Sorry about that, a little interruption. Our baby woke up and was crying. So what were we saying? What do you know about the Silent Twins?
Oh, the Silent Twins. I know that they were silent.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they were twins.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they had their own language, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really all I know.
All right. Well, this is a fun story. There was a lot to it, and there were a few twists and turns that I was not expecting.
Nice. Okay.
So we'll start from the beginning. Oh, and just to
Good place to start.
put this out there, I got most of my information from Wikipedia and from The New Yorker.
The New Yorker.
Yeah.
They're walking here. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay, so we'll start with the parents. They were Gloria and Aubrey Gibbons. They were Caribbean immigrants living in Barbados. They had 5 kids, which were Greta, who was born in 1957, David, who was born in 1959, the twins Jane and Jennifer were born in 1963, and then Rosie, who was born in 1967. So Gloria was a housewife, and Aubrey was a technician for the Royal Air Force.
Nice.
The Gibbons family, they were part of the post-war migratory wave of West Indians. This is going to be a very important part of the story. They were black. Their whole family was black. And so, like all immigrants, you know, they were moving to England, and they just had a lot of hope that this would be like a really good change for their family, and they wanted to make England their home and become true Britons.
Nice. Don't know why, but sure. I'm just kidding.
However, because of Aubrey's the dad, because of Aubrey's work and everything, and because of their financial situation, they ended up moving around a lot, and they had a hard time adapting to a culture that often found them ugly because of their skin color, and they were very like mistreated just in general during that time. Eventually they did end up in Wales, which is where a majority of the story takes place. But yeah, so Gloria called them the twinnies. And when they were toddlers, they were normal, happy toddlers. She described them with cute round cheeks, with bows in their hair, and they adored their baby sister, Rosie. However, it was pretty clear by the time that these two were 3 to 4 that they had a little bit of an issue with their speech. They just didn't talk a lot. They spoke maybe 3 to 4 words at a time, if that. And so when they started school, they knew that they needed to get them into like a speech therapy program or something. And so this is a quote from the dad, Aubrey, when he did an interview with BBC. He says, "In the home, they would talk, make sounds and all that, but we knew that they weren't quite like, you know, normal children talking readily." So that gives you kind of an idea just from early on in their childhood. They already kind of had an issue with speaking.
I mean, I'm late into my adulthood and I still have trouble speaking.
I know, you never stop. Just kidding.
Oh. I was going to say in a different way, but okay.
I'm just teasing.
Thanks, babe.
All right. So at 8 years old, their family moved to a town called Devon for Aubrey's job, and the twins were teased and taunted mercilessly in school for their skin color and for their quiet nature. So this was around the time that the silence became really obvious. Their silence became really obvious. According to June, at 8 or 9, we started suffering. We stopped talking. People called us names. We were the only black girls in school. Terrible names. They pulled our hair. We made a pact. We said we weren't going to speak to anybody. We stopped talking altogether. Only us two in our bedroom upstairs.
Including the family?
Yeah.
That's so sad. Like, why would you...
This whole story is kind of sad, but it's really interesting. Like, it's interesting. Anyways.
It's just sad beginnings, you know? Like, you know, not just them, but, like, you know, black people in general are so oppressed for so long. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I don't know. It's just sad.
History, there's a dark side of history for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they stopped making eye contact with people. They stopped speaking to their parents and to their older siblings, Greta and David, but they still did speak with Rosie, their younger sister.
That's good.
Sometimes the family could hear them talking in their room, but they could never understand what they were saying because it was a language that only that they knew.
You know, points for creativity as well for that, because, I mean, it's not easy coming up with your own language.
I know, but isn't there, like, I don't know, when you're a twin, there's, like, some sort of, like, twin telepathy thing that people talk about?
I mean, to an extent, I guess.
I'm sure for them, because they spent, you know, every waking moment together, it was easier.
If there are any twins out there, let us know.
Yeah.
Because now I'm curious if that's actually a thing.
I've read a lot of stories about people having, like, or twins having some sort of quote-unquote twin telepathy, even if it's just, like, strong intuition about each other, you know? But
I mean, you remember in Haunting of Hill House, how the two younger ones, can't remember their names, but...
Yeah.
Luke and...
Starts with an N?
Nancy? No.
I don't remember.
Whoever it was. But, like, you know, after spoiler alert, like, when she died, her twin brother said he, like, felt all cold, and they, like, even in the background, or not the background, the history of when they were children and everything, they had that kind of emotional connection. Mm-hmm. Which I think is kind of cool. Like, if that is a thing, that's awesome, but, I mean, I guess it could make sense.
I think to an extent it's real. Also, the girl's name is Nell. Luke and Nell.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's a good show, by the way.
That is a good show.
But yeah, I think twin telepathy is very real in the same sense that parent telepathy is kind of real, where it's like there's a lot of people that have that sense that like something's going on with their kids and they're usually right.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot to that though, and I could make this a very spiritual thing, but I'm gonna save that for another time.
Fair enough.
You know. Anyways, so yeah, in 1974, the family moved to Haverford West, a community that is notorious for their racism. Or was at least during the time. They attended Haverford West County Secondary School with their brother David. The bullying got so bad while they were there that they needed to be dismissed 5 minutes early every day to avoid harassment. And every day they would walk home from school, and people would describe it as like almost as if they were walking in sync while praying. They would walk very slowly, their heads would be bowed, and they would be completely and unnervingly in sync.
The twins were being?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Redrum. Just kidding.
Okay.
They were described as beautifully dressed, always clean, and always tidy, and they were very religious, which probably, you know, helped with that rumor that they were like creepily praying as they walked home, whatever. But they had a ritual that they would do almost daily where they would pray to God to forgive them for their sins, and they would read from the Bible.
Nice.
So this is a quote, I think it was from Jane. She said, "We would open the Bible and start chanting from it and pray like mad. We'd pray to him to not let us hurt our family by ignoring them, to give us strength to talk to our mother and talk to our father. But we couldn't do it. Hard it was. Too hard." Okay, so... Oh, I think that's interesting. Sorry, I just want to say this before I moved on. I think it's interesting that they were praying about that, because you'll see throughout this that, you know, they made this decision early on to not talk. But then it becomes kind of like this mental prison where it, you know, like they don't want to be like this, but they can't help it. And that was like the first time that you really could tell, because they're praying like, we don't want to hurt our family. Like, we want to be able to talk to them. But they couldn't. They couldn't do it.
Like physically? They were incapable
I don't know.
of
I
it,
think it was just like a mental block. Like they were not able. Like, of course they could. They actually could speak words, but something was holding them back. Like they couldn't do it.
Like a blood pact.
Yeah, kind of.
I was kidding.
In 1976, John Reese, a school medical officer, came to their school to give the students tuberculosis. To give the students the tuberculosis vaccines.
I was gonna say that's kind of okay.
Oh man, okay.
Goodness me.
In his book, The Silent Twins, written in published in 1986, he describes a parade of white arms and then suddenly a black one. He claimed that she seemed to be in a trance, nearly lifeless and doll-like. He rubbed her arm with the rubbing alcohol, and then he gave her the shot, and there was absolutely no reaction. And then, of course, after that, she was followed by another black girl in that exact same trance-like state, with also no reaction to the needle. He was deeply disturbed by this, and so he went to the headmaster and expressed his concerns, because these two were the only black girls in the school. And so he voiced his concerns about these two, and the headmaster was like, "Oh, they're no trouble, like, don't worry about it." And he's like, "No, that's really weird."
That would be really creepy though, just like seeing, I just keep thinking, like, blank stare. Just walk in, eyes wide open, blank stare, sits down, pokes, no reaction, walks out.
Right.
That would be pretty unnerving.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it's one thing to think, you know, because of how, I don't know, racism was such a thing back then. You see these children that were different colors, and you think, oh, well, I mean, they're exactly like other kids. Their skin is just different colors, and it's easier to, like, you know, separate the racism from that. But in this case, it's like these two were the only black girls in their school, and they were completely different from everyone in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, something here is wrong. And it just, like, kind of plays into that whole part of the reason why they got picked on so much, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so John Reese, he didn't want to give up on this situation, so he referred the case to Evan Davies, the consultant child psychiatrist for the county. Evan Davies couldn't tell the girls apart, and when talking with them, he couldn't get them to respond. So essentially, he kind of gave up on the case and just said, like, this is too big of a challenge for me. And so he referred them to Anne Treharn, a speech therapist at the hospital, and they began treatment there in 1977. During their treatment at the hospital, they almost never spoke to her or reached or to each other in front of her. However, they agreed to talk to each other with a recording device in the room if she was not present.
Interesting. Okay.
So that is
Good
kind of
method.
right. Yeah. So they agreed to do that, and that's where we learn about the language they spoke. So they were able to decipher the things that they were saying and discovered that their secret language was a mixture of Barbadian slang from Barbados and English, and it was spoken very fast and with a West Indian accent. So when in the room, Anne said that she could sense that June wanted to speak to her, but June was always stopped by eye signals from Jennifer. June later said that this was their quote-unquote eye language.
Eye language? Like they looked at each other and just...
spoke through their eyes.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, and it kind of appeared that Jennifer was controlling June because June, you could tell, wanted to be a little bit more outspoken.
Yeah.
So they were transferred to Eastgate Center for Special Education in Pembroke, which was 8 miles away. What's interesting about this is that a lot of this was done without consulting their parents, but their parents were kind of just like, sure, you guys are the professionals, you do what you need to do. So they were sent to this institution where they had therapy sessions with a psychiatrist named Tim Thomas.
Tim Thomas.
But it's kind of the same thing. They always responded the same way with complete silence, and they had a tendency to just keep staring down, which I'm sure would be frustrating for anyone.
For sure.
And then kind of going back to their family was really struggling and suffering through all of this. It kind of made things in their house really tense. And they said that their muteness dominated everything. And family dinners often left Greta, the oldest sister, in tears because it was so stressful.
Man, that's upsetting.
Yeah. Greta got married in 1978. The twins attended the service but refused to join in any of the festivities. Going back to Tim Thomas and their therapy sessions. In regards to their silence in his sessions, he says, you've got people in front of you who say nothing. You're getting animated about a particular subject and there's absolutely no feedback. It's quite threatening in a way. Which threatening I wouldn't have considered, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that is interesting. They're like the strong silent type. Because, I mean, silence in the right setting can be pretty intimidating, too.
Right, and there was nothing. Like, people literally said that they acted like zombies, like they were lifeless. They would look at the ground, they wouldn't move, they wouldn't react in any sort of way.
That's so bizarre, because, I mean, the whole, I guess you could call it, was not speaking, but is everything else just subsequent? Just,
they would only communicate with each other. And that's every sense of the word communicate.
Like, what's the psychology behind that? Like, if you just had, because I mean, like, there are monks out there who do the silent vows and stuff like that, where they don't speak for a certain period of time. Like, what kind of toll does that take? Mentally.
You'll find out. This story, like, it's super weird, but it gets kind of crazy. That's okay. So, moving on, in 1977, the girls were separated because nothing else seemed to work. Jennifer was going to remain at Eastgate, and June was going to be sent 30 miles away to live at St. David's Adolescent Unit, which they realized at the time that this was an aggressive approach, but they hoped that this would help them establish distinct personalities. Tim Thomas said, we were trapped, really, because if they went on as they were, what sort of future would they have, not being able to communicate? There was one group of us at Eastgate that said we should separate them because it would give them an opportunity to see if they survive. We felt it was an incredibly controlled situation, and we didn't know who was controlling it, June or Jennifer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They both were.
Right. So when they were told that they were going to be separated, the girls lost their ever-loving minds.
Really?
They started screaming, and then they started attacking each other. So Jennifer...
The sisters attacked each other?
They were like hitting each other, punching each other. Jennifer dug her nails into June's cheek. June pulled out a chunk of Jennifer's hair out. They chased each other around the office, screeching, and then they had to be forced apart by nurses.
That's crazy, because, I mean, Wow, that's weird.
Right?
Maybe it's like I don't know, the only interaction between them that made them think that they can't take their anger out on anyone else.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's
Well, think
weird
about
though.
how horrifying that would be. These two, like, basically lifeless beings in front of you with no emotion, no reaction. All of a sudden, like, banshees are just attacking each other.
No.
Like, what the heck?
Yeah, that'd be creepy.
So, eventually they were calmed down and suddenly they spoke. And what they did is they called over the phone. They called Tim Thomas. I'm not exactly sure, like, if they were pulled into another room or what, but they spoke. And I know that this conversation happened over the phone. And they talked with him for a while, and they promised him that they would talk, and they would talk with him as long as they wanted to, as long as they were allowed to stay together. So with that promise, he hung up, and they said, everything's gonna be fine. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And the next day, they went back to being completely silent. Absolutely nothing. So the separation was carried out in March of 1978. When they were separated, June became essentially comatose, to the point where they would need to have two people pull her out of bed every day, and they would just prop her up against the wall. And they said that she was very corpse-like. She was stiff and heavy and just like wouldn't move.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah. They continued to struggle to be themselves. They just really couldn't seem to separate physically or mentally. Over the years, they would say really creepy things to each other, and like you can really start to see the psychological damage behind this start to play out.
Mm-hmm.
So Jennifer would say things like, "You are Jennifer, you are me," and June would be devastated and cry and say things like, "No, I am June, I am June."
So a little bit of an identity crisis too.
Oh,
then.
for sure, yeah. June later recalled, quote, "One day she'd wake up and be me, and one day I would wake up and be her. We used to say, 'Give me back myself. If you give me back myself, I'll give you back yourself.'" End quote.
Man, okay. That
So the separation failed, obviously. They were reunited by winter of 1979 when they were 16. And at that point, they both decided to drop out of school completely and just go home. And, of course, there's still free will, so they couldn't be, like, confined.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, though, they went home and they locked themselves in their room. They would not come out for meals anymore, and they would only communicate to their family with like letters under the door, and they would write notes like, "We want to watch TV tonight. Please leave the living room clear and unlocked." Like, what? I did read somewhere that they still sometimes communicated with Rosie, but it wasn't like a whole lot. And at this point, their whole family had really just become depressed and had kind of given up. So Greta was married and moved out. David had moved out. Rosie was still in the house, obviously, but she was kind of doing her own thing, and so was the mom. And then the dad would just come home every day and just sit in front of the television and just not talk to anybody either, because he was just over it.
So they were all kind of, I mean, not necessarily lifeless, but just I don't know. I guess the depression got to them a little bit, but
I think when it came to the parents, the lifelessness was brought on because of the girls.
yeah.
Aubrey, the dad, was, I don't know, he kind of faced a whole life of like failures, if that makes sense. Like, he was successful in his job in the sense that he provided for his family, but I think he didn't go as far as he wanted to.
Fair enough. I mean, you said that they had to move from town to town doing whatever.
Yeah, and they had this great idea of like, this dream life in England that really just wasn't all what it cracked up to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course his daughters don't talk to him or anyone. His older two kids don't come visit very often, because why would they in a house that is that toxic, So yeah, it was a pretty sad situation.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say I blame him, honestly, because, if we had, more than one kid and then they all of a sudden just decided to only speak to each other and not us, it would
be so hard.
That'd be so hard. That would destroy me.
Yeah. Well, and I cannot imagine how frustrating that would be, because that I don't like being ignored. Like, one of my pet peeves is when people ignore me.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Miles.
Just kidding.
You know what I mean, though. But like, when it's to the point where like nothing you can do can get them to actually speak to you.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that means everything, you know, begging, crying, threatening, everything.
Everything.
And they couldn't get him to talk. So
If you don't talk to me, you're grounded. Just kidding. They're locked in their room anyway, but go to your room. I'm already in my room.
All right. This is actually a quote from Jane's diary about the situation with her parents. Well, specifically her mom. She says, quote, "I worry about my mother. I see grief for all the years in her eyes. She is not young, but a romantic, a child at heart." And so they talk about in their journals. So that was end quote.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about in their journals, like, basically that they can see their mom and their dad deteriorating, which is really sad.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on a little bit, talking about them in their rooms and kind of what was going on behind the closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
So these two girls, despite the weirdness that was happening in their lives, they were both incredibly imaginative.
I believe it.
So when they were in their rooms, they actually had dolls that they would play with, and they would create very elaborate storylines, multiple storylines. They would create basically like plays with each other with these dolls. Entire families, entire storylines, deaths that were really weird and exaggerated, and you know, the whole 9 yards. And they had this little fantasy life, and it was super interesting. Yeah.
Do you think that might be like an effect of them not living out their normal lives?
Maybe.
And like just they reflect everything that they want to happen in
you
stories?
know, that's really interesting, because one of the families that they created out of these dolls was their family.
Huh.
But they also gave everybody in their family like weird deaths. Like they weren't like trying to murder their families, but it was like, oh, Rosie died of so and such disease when she was 4, even though she didn't.
Right.
You know, that was just like how they did their little
Interesting
plays thing. Yeah. That'll kind of be brought up a little bit later too, like what you're talking about with the whole them not living out their lives.
Yeah.
So in 1979 for Christmas, their mother, Gloria, got them both these really nice leather-bound journals that had locks on them.
Nice.
And so the two of them really clung to that, and they began to keep detailed accounts of their lives in these journals. And then eventually they enrolled in a creative writing correspondence course, but they enrolled as one student, specifically student 8201.
Okay.
So they enrolled together as one person. And they both had this dream of becoming famous authors. June actually wrote a book called The Pepsi-Cola Addict. It was about a teenager from Malibu who fantasized about living somewhere else. The main character in her story, his name was Preston. He actually, during this novel, was seduced by a school teacher, takes up with a gang, ends up in jail, attempts a homosexual relationship, ends up returning home, and then dying from a drug overdose.
Oh.
This was all in her novel that she wrote.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And then Jennifer, she wrote 2 novels in a matter of weeks. The first one was called The Pugilist, which is about a boy who had a failing heart, and his father was the surgeon who gave him a heart transplant, and he used the heart from their boxer dog, and the dog's soul gets transported with the heart into the boy's body.
How old were they both at this time?
About 16.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's like, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very, what's the word? I don't know, elaborate.
Right. The second book that Jennifer wrote was called Discomania, which is about a group of urban youths controlled by their need for a disco beat.
Interesting.
On June 8th, 1980, so they were 17 at the time, Jennifer wrote in her diary, "I started a fabulous new novel, Discomania. Last night I spent the night doing the 14 plot points. It's going to be a knockout, I'm sure." End quote.
Do we know what that one's about?
The group of urban youths controlled by their need for a disco beat. That's all that the description was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So are these novels actually available for purchase or at the library or something?
June's novel was published by Vanity Press.
Which one? Discomania or?
No, June's was the Pepsi-Cola.
Oh, the Pepsi-Cola. Okay, my bad.
Mm-hmm. So June's was published by a Vanity Press. I don't know exactly which one, but Jennifer wanted like a more established press to publish it, and she kept getting rejected. So I don't think either of Jennifer's novels got published,
Sad.
but June's did. So that would be interesting. If anybody has read that, let me know. All right. So this is where the weird turn happens.
Okay.
This is where, just to preface this for everyone, I had to take a break from taking my notes because I couldn't wrap my mind around what was happening. So when the girls were 18, they had this new, fresh desire to experience life. So when they were in grade school, before they dropped out and had all their weird, like, psychological evaluations, they both had a little bit of a crush on a guy named Lance Kennedy, which was a classmate at Eastgate, who was one of the only guys who was nice to them, and he actually defended them against bullies.
Wow, good for him.
He was a few years older than them, but he was just a really roundabout guy, you know, nice
Good
guy.
job, Lance. Good job.
So they looked him up, they tracked him down, they found his address, and found out that he actually had moved to Philadelphia.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But they went to his house anyway.
Wow.
In Wales. When they got to the house was empty. People still lived there. They just weren't home. And they just walked into the front door. It was unlocked. They just walked right in and made themselves at home. They made peanut butter sandwiches. They went through Lance's siblings' clothes. And they looked at pictures that were on the wall, looked through picture books of, like, their family's Hawaii trip.
What the heck?
Yeah. The parents got home and caught them as they were trying to run out.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to kind of interrogate these girls, like, what are you doing in our house? You know, trying to get all these answers. And they just couldn't get the girls to speak. And they felt a little bit sorry for them, so they just, like, let them go and didn't press charges. But the girls kept coming back. They kept coming back to the house, and eventually they befriended the three brothers of Lance. And the three brothers were Jerry, and then Wayne, who was the same age as they were, and Carl, who was the youngest. They hung out with them regularly. They kind of became buddies. And Jennifer and June, along with Wayne, got really into drinking and doing drugs, such as weed, sniffing glue, and sniffing lighter fluid.
Okay.
When they were intoxicated, they were super laid back, and they would talk, and they would laugh.
So the secret is getting them high.
Pretty much. And drunk.
And drunk. Same though. I'm just kidding.
And they became essentially, like, from the boys' perspective, they were just normal teenage girls who just wanted to
Have fun,
I guess. So Wayne would join them with the drugs and the alcohol, but he didn't want anything more than that. You know, they were just friends. However, Carl was a little bit more of a flirt. In Jennifer's diary, June 1981, she says, "Dear diary, one of the best days of my life. I've lost my beautiful virginity to Carl Kennedy at last."
Carl, you sleazebag.
Carl was 14.
What? What?
Yep.
I thought you said they were around their age.
Wayne was around their age.
Oh,
Carl
Wayne.
was the younger brother.
Oh, no.
So what happened was, there is more to her quote, but I'm not going to read it because it's gross. But basically what happened was this group of them, I think it was the three brothers and the two sisters, they went to a church. They broke into a church, got super drunk, and then in, like, the chapel area, Jennifer and Carl had sex, and June watched.
What? What? I mean, I guess they were kids. I mean, they didn't really have... I don't know. Never mind.
So June was devastated by this entire thing.
Even though she was watching it?
Yeah, she wrote in her diary about how, like, Jennifer had succumbed to the devil and, like, how she was changing before her eyes and how, I don't know, it was just super weird. But then to duplicate her sister's experience, 13 days later, they were in a barn, they got super drunk, and Jane slept with Carl.
I mean,
I'm laughing because I'm so uncomfortable.
I'm not condoning this at all, but I mean, like, this Carl dude is living the average teenage boy's dream.
The fact, though, like, okay, it makes sense to me in my mind that he would sleep with one of them. But the only reason he slept with the second one was because she wanted to duplicate her sister's experience.
Yeah, that's weird.
She had no interest in actually having sex. She just wanted to do the thing that her sister had done.
I mean, they had this strong connection, so I guess it makes sense, but that doesn't make it any less. I mean, first of all, inappropriate.
Oh, for sure. In the New Yorker article that I read, they read excerpts from Jane and Jennifer, their diaries during this ordeal, and it gets graphic. So that just the whole thing was super uncomfortable, and it was very clear that it was a psychological thing rather than a physical thing. Like and of course they're religious too, so a lot of it had to do with like they felt like they were like Jennifer, for her this was the most incredible experience ever, but then June was doing it because like she felt like she deserved to be punished or something. I don't know, it was super weird and it's uncomfortable. So I'm gonna move on.
Okay, fair enough.
The girls continued to spend time with the boys. This experience with them both sleeping with Carl, this was actually their first physical affection that the girls had known. Probably since, being hugged and kissed as babies.
Right.
The situation, as glamorous as it sounds, really was just a weird teenage situation where, they hung out with these boys and the boys tolerated them, but they really didn't care for them that much. They considered them kind of annoying and needy and a little bit desperate. Like they were just desperate for their attention, and the girls that really came out to play too, that the girls would spend hours getting ready to go see them, and they would dress up. They would put on a ton of makeup. They would wear wigs. They would wear like short skirts, and just like completely opposite to the life that they had before. And the reason that all of this was so hard for me to wrap my mind around is that they had made such a precedent for themselves of being these reserved, quiet girls, so disturbingly silent. Now all of a sudden they're like turning into psychotic teenagers that are going above and beyond to make themselves noticed. So
the whole flip.
Yeah, it's super weird. Basically, so the summer ended, the boys moved on with their lives, and the girls, to them, it was the best summer of their lives because they had broken out of their routine. They'd broken out of their shells. But of course, all good things come to an end. So now it is fall of 1981. The fun from the summer stopped, and the girls went back into their room and back to being silent. And this took a huge toll on their mental health, and they started to binge eat and then purge and then binge eat and then purge over and over and over again. This horrible, disgusting cycle. They became so bored and so trapped that, Jennifer, in her diary, she wrote, "I will again gain control over my mind, my body. I must be at peace with myself. I will want death if I have no peace."
Damn.
Once, they quit getting the satisfaction from food, they started to do things to change their appearance to gain control. So they would order a bunch of skincare stuff and hair stuff and do all those things. They even tried getting into magic to change themselves. They were trying to use psychic mind control things to remove blemishes and scars from their appearance.
Weird.
That didn't work.
Oh, well, yeah. If they did, I'll be like, "What's your secret?" But
yeah, give me the spell. I'll do it right now. They couldn't get the satisfaction they were looking for. And then along with that, they also couldn't figure out their role in each other's lives because, they're adults now. They're 18. They're wanting to find themselves, but they can't do it without each other.
Yeah.
And they can't figure that out. At this point, reading their journals, you could tell that it became very apparent that they started to completely loathe each other.
Really?
I actually have a quote. This was from June's diary. They couldn't work out who they were supposed to be for each other until they understood who they were for each other. Quote, "Jay and I are like lovers, a love-hate relationship. She thinks I am weak. She knows not how I fear her. This makes me feel more weak. I want to be strong enough to split from her. Oh, Lord, help me. I am in despair." And then this is from Jennifer's diary. Jennifer said, quote, "She should have died at birth. Cain killed Abel. No twin should forget that." Then
Oof.
back to June's journal. "I am an enslavement to her, this creature who is with me every hour of my living soul." And then one last quote, this one from Jennifer. "Jay can't be my real twin. My real twin was born the exact time as me. has my rising sign, my looks, my ways, my dreams, my ambitions. He or she will have my weaknesses, failures, opinions. All this makes a twin. No differences. I can't stand differences. End quote.
Man, that's whack.
So, yeah. It's a little sinister. And from reading that, it's clear to me that Jennifer doesn't really actually want a twin. She wants a duplicate clone.
Which she doesn't understand the difference between those things.
Yep.
Their whole, I guess, process, that it just, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind, because they were silent for the better part of their life up until now. I don't know. What I'm trying to do is just figure out what's going on inside their heads.
And yeah, what you and the whole world.
Right. And what makes him think this way. And like initially, like, I don't know, there were probably better solutions to their bullying and everything than to just stay silent. I don't know. That's just what I'm like wrapping my head around, because this is just a lot. A lot is going on with these two.
Yeah. And it's about to get a little crazier.
Oh no.
This is that fall. They got into magic, whatever, that didn't work out. So they started acting out towards the community. They tried to join a gang. They were rejected. They started selling bicycles and glue. They would ding-dong ditch people and just ring doorbells repeatedly. Eventually, they started to break into public buildings. They broke into a school, and in that school, they broke a window, stole some books, and vandalized the walls.
Interesting.
They tried at one point to break a payphone, and then they ended up calling the police to confess their crimes. However, once they hung up, they booked it and ran away before the police got there.
Okay.
They wrote in their diaries during this time about their desire, and this was separate from each other. They both started writing this, that they had a desire to burn things to the ground and to create bombs.
They didn't actually do that, did they?
On November 8th, they were arrested after being caught breaking a window and lighting a fire at the Pembroke Technical College. Their bedroom was searched when they were arrested, and their diaries were confiscated, and that's when they found out about their desire to create bombs.
Right.
And they spent several months in custody awaiting trial. Interestingly enough, though, is that people talked about their isolation of being in custody as like a blessing and a curse. Like, it's a blessing to get them off the street, but it's also a curse because they almost thrived in isolation.
Yeah.
But then they would self-destruct. And so it was hard on everyone, because everyone's like, we don't know what the best thing is for these people, you know?
I mean, how can you know when they don't talk at all? But
yeah. And again, they were described as zombies rather than, someone said, other than considering them desperate human beings, he considered them zombies, because it was easier to rationalize their behavior if you thought of them that way.
Yeah. Trying to put into perspective as well, like thinking about these people, putting yourself in their shoes and everything, it's just...
In like June and...
No, not that, well, their shoes as well, but the people around them.
Yeah.
The people around them, because...
How was your day at work, honey? Oh my gosh. Let me tell you.
Because, I mean, I don't know, it would frustrate me too, like feeling that I can't help these people if I was in that kind of profession to help these people, or just if it was in my better interest.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's just what, I don't know, that'll be frustrating.
So the place that they were being held, it's called Puckle Church. They were confined together, and it became complete torment for them. They couldn't stand the sight, smell, or sound of each other, and they began to wish each other dead. They literally wanted to kill each other. This is from June's journal. She said, "One of us is plotting to kill one of us. A thud on the head on a cool evening, dragging the lifeless body, digging a secret grave. I'm in a dangerous situation, a scheming, insidious plot. How will I end? I'm in enslavement to her, this creature who lounges in this cell, who is with me every hour of my living soul."
It's so funny that they referred to, I mean, not funny in a different way, but how they refer to each other as creatures and not actual people.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, too, is that they were still relatively silent. Like, they had that weird summer where they did drugs and stuff and got wild. But during that time, they only spoke to these boys. you know, and other than like a phone call here and a phone call there and like speaking up here and there, like they were still really silent.
Mm-hmm.
They'd only talk to each other. And so then when they couldn't stand each other, they just wrote in their journals.
I guess this is a stupid question, but did they ever read each other's journals?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. Because, I mean, if they're writing all these... And they were locked journals as well, so I'm sure they kept the key on them, but I don't know. I feel like if they just...
It would be so interesting to read their journals.
Oh, for sure. Like, what else is in there? I mean, I don't want to know everything, but...
Well, there's more to this quote. So June goes on to say, "We have become fatal enemies in each other's eyes. We scheme, we plot, and who will win? A deadly day is getting closer each minute, coming to a point of imminent death, like hands creeping out against the night sky. Intentions of evil, blood, a knife, a mincer. I say to myself, how can I get rid of my own shadow? Impossible or not impossible? Without my shadow, would I die? Without my shadow, would I gain life?" End quote.
That's like sinisterly deep.
It's like Edgar Allan Poe up in here.
Exactly.
But like you can really see the psychological effect this is having on them.
Uh-huh.
You know, like even at the end of that quote, she's saying, "What would happen if she's gone? Would I even survive?"
Yeah.
But she wants her gone. But does she?
That's so... This story's crazy.
When they were together, they literally wanted to kill each other. When they were apart, they were so lonely that they wanted to die. They met with a defense lawyer, but he couldn't get them to speak. Eventually, one of them did speak in their interview, which in turn started a physical fight between them. The lawyer said that they were literally trying to tear each other's eyes out, and nurses had to separate them again.
Oh no, not the eyes.
Yeah. So during this ordeal, they were diagnosed with having psychopathic personality disorder. They were sent to an institution called Broadmoor, which is England's notorious maximum security hospital for the criminally insane.
Yeah, I guess that is, from the sounds of it, they need to be there.
Yeah. In May 1982, they were tried on 16 counts of burglary, theft, and arson. They pleaded guilty per advice from their lawyer, and they were sentenced to be detained at Broadmoor. They were only 19 at the time. And in the article that I read, at the time in Broadmoor, the youngest patient there was 27. And so people had a lot of issues with them going there because they were only 19.
Mm-hmm.
But they needed it because the other option was prison. And with how they act, they needed psychological help.
Fair. Now, quick question. So, do they have any contact at all with their family during this time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So when they were in Broadmoor, their family came to visit. It was rare, but they did come to visit a few times. And the reason that it was only a few times is that Broadmoor, even though it was a like a hospital, it really was also like a prison because it's maximum security. And so they said that like going to visit them, they had to walk through concrete wall after concrete wall, you know, doors being shut behind you and guards walking you through. And it was just really depressing because they did bad things and they deserved to be punished for that, but they didn't like kill anyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to call it petty theft because they also lit things on fire, but they were being treated like some of the worst criminals, at least how their parents saw it, because of how secured they were in this hospital, you know,
all the links they went to keep them away. Keep them away from the world.
Yeah, for sure. When they were sent to Broadmoor after their sentencing, June slipped into a state of, quote, torpor, which I hadn't heard of before, so I looked it up, and that is basically just a physical and mental inactivity or lethargy. A few weeks after they were sentenced there, June attempted suicide. She failed. Jennifer, a few weeks later, attacked a nurse, and they were at one point separated from each other and denied access from seeing each other. Also during this time, this is a little creepy, June didn't speak for a month, and then when she started to speak, she would have a menacing smile in every response.
No, that's not okay.
Jennifer would speak, but she was rarely understood because she would speak so fast and with her accent and then her mix of English and the Barbados language. So she was very rarely understood, which is almost just as bad.
Yeah.
So,
but at least it wasn't with a menacing smile.
They were there for a little over 12 years, or just about 12 years. The New Yorker, this is what they said about it. Nearly 12 years had passed, punctuated by flirtations with male inmates and games over who would eat more or less. The twins could not understand why they weren't released after a few years of this, quote, treatment. But the doctors and social workers who reviewed their case every few years decided that they needed another year or two. Another quote this is from June. Juvenile delinquents get 2 years in prison. We got 12 years of hell because we didn't speak. We had to work hard to get out. We went to the doctor. We said, look, they wanted us to talk. We're talking now. He said, you're not getting out. You're going to be here for 30 years. We lost hope, really.
30.
I wrote a letter to the Home Office. I wrote a letter to the Queen asking her to pardon us, to get us out, but we were trapped. End quote.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they kind of deserved it.
Yeah.
To an extent. I don't know, like give him parole or something. Is that still a thing? It is, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
it is still a thing.
Well, and I mean, hearing it from June's perspective, it's really devastating. But I'm sure on the outside looking in, they still had a lot of problems. Like, and I'll explain. So, while they were there, Jennifer actually developed schizophrenia. And she would hear gunshots outside of her door that weren't actually there. And she started to kind of act like she was possessed a little bit. She would quote the Bible nonstop. And then she started accusing June of ruining her life and attempting, like, plotting against her, trying to kill her. Like, she literally accused her of poisoning her drink, like, every other day. So, yeah. So, obviously, there were some issues still there. But I could tell, like, when June was saying that she clearly didn't think there was anything that needed to be done more. But essentially, their cycle just went on. Their cycle of they would be separated and they would, lose their minds being separated or go comatose or do whatever. And then they would be put back together and then they would hate each other and loathe each other and want to kill each other. And then they would try to kill each other and try to rip each other's faces off, literally. And then they'd be separated again. And the cycle would just repeat for 12 years. Interesting, though, little tidbit. Their diaries were studied by psychiatrists. And there was no evidence in their diaries that they were psychotic or psychopathic. Like, there was zero evidence in their diaries.
That is kind of interesting.
Wow. I don't believe that. But according to the New Yorker, that's what it said, was just that there was no evidence that there was anything wrong with these girls based off what they were writing. Except for they were also writing about how they loathed each other and wanted each other dead. So I don't know what constitutes as psychotic, but...
And then being all sinister and deep.
Right. That was just an interesting, like, little added.
Yeah. I was thinking, so going back to the whole schizophrenia thing, that got me thinking, like, could that have been avoided if they didn't have this whole pact before? If they were speaking? Because if I'm not mistaken, schizophrenia is one of those disorders that people don't know why it happens. People don't know, like, doctors, scientists, whoever, don't know what causes it, basically. And so I'm just thinking, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think maybe a little bit too hard on it, but it's just interesting how she just developed it.
Yeah, well, and I've also heard things like, especially back in the 1900s, a lot of these mental institutions caused more harm than good.
Yeah, that's true too.
And not necessarily in every case, but a lot of people, because they were confined, they lost their minds that way because they weren't getting the kind of interaction that they need with other people and the kind of treatment they really needed. They were just locked up because they were, quote, a danger to other people or themselves.
This is another sad thing, which back in 100 years or so ago, they would experiment on these patients.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of these asylums were decommissioned later on. But like, people would experiment on them and see. I didn't even know what they would do, but
yeah. Ugh, creepy stuff.
Creepy stuff. Anyway, moving on.
They were nearly 30 when they were released from Broadmoor. So, like I said, almost 12 years there. So I'm going to read a little bit from Wikipedia because it explains it really well. The day that they left Broadmoor, it was March 9th, 1993. They were released, but they were being transferred to a minimum security clinic in Southwest Wales. So they were still going to be getting treatment. When they were on the bus, Jennifer rested her head on June's shoulder and said, "At long last, we are out." Less than 12 hours later, Jennifer was dead.
What? How? What happened?
So, according to Wallace, who was one of their psychiatrists, her therapist, he said the girls had a long standing agreement that if one died, the other must begin to speak and live a normal life. During their stay in the hospital, they began to believe that it was necessary for one of them to die. And after much discussion, Jennifer agreed to make the sacrifice of her life. In March of 1993, the twins were transferred from Broadmoor. On arrival, June could not be roused. She was taken to the hospital, where she died soon after of acute myocarditis, which is just inflammation of the heart. But they said it was sudden. There was no evidence of drugs or poison in her system, and her death remains a mystery.
Just that her heart got inflamed. Inflamed? What's the word?
Inflamed.
Inflamed.
Yeah. Basically, if you were to Google the Silent Twins, one of the things that you'll find is the Silent Twins death pact. Essentially, that's what they believed, is that in order for one of them to live a normal life, the other one had to die.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they made that pact, but how she died, like, that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
She basically just, they said that when they were on the bus, Jennifer slept on her sister's lap with her eyes open, which that in itself is creepy, but it's like during that, I guess she just decided that she was gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
And she did, because her death was so sudden and so undetected.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the night that Jennifer died, June wrote in her diary, quote, "Today my beloved twin sister Jennifer died. She is dead. Her heart stopped beating. She will never recognize me. Mom and Dad came to see her body. I kissed her stone-colored face. I went hysterical with grief. We prayed for forgiveness, but of course he didn't forgive us. He punished us for 12 years. He hated us. He didn't listen to us. We suffered. And at the end of it all, what does it mean if she died?"
That's really sad.
Yeah. However, a few days after her death, June was visiting with a therapist, and the therapist said that June was in a strange mood. June said, "I am free at last, liberated. At last, Jennifer has given up her life for me." She also described it as a tsunami, washing her of her sins and being free of her sister.
So kind of like bittersweet for her.
Yeah.
Okay.
June was released from this clinic in Wales a year later in 1994. She's still alive. She takes medication daily. She's able to talk, but sometimes people still have trouble understanding her. And she visits Jennifer's grave every Tuesday. She talks about how she has a desire to live a normal life and to get married and have kids, but she recognizes that, that ship has sailed. She's too old for that now. She's 57, I think, or 59. She basically says, once a twin, always a twin. I'll always love my sister. And she also says that, I used to miss my sister. Now I've accepted her. She's in me. She makes me stronger. I accept the fact that she's gone now. That took me 5 years of grieving, crying all the time. Now all my tears are gone. They all dried up inside my eyes. I don't get lonely now. I've got her, haven't I? So in a way, it's still like that identity crisis. I think, she's accepted that her sister's passed, but she kind of went on to live a seemingly normal life after that, but she still feels that her sister is like completely with her.
Mm-hmm.
Which I hear a lot of people talk about that, like when they have family members pass on, that they're always with them. But I think with their situation, it's a little bit different, considering they couldn't separate themselves.
Like they thought it was literal.
Yeah. So I wonder,
as if she absorbed her soul or something.
Right. I'm hoping that it's not as weird as that, and that she just really is, grieving her twin sister, and she's always here with me. But
I don't know, based on their history.
Yeah. So their story was put into the media quite a bit. In 1986, there was a television drama called The Silent Twins. In 1994, there was a documentary called The Silent Twins Without My Shadow. And in 2011, there was a play based off of the novel Speechless, which was written by one of the psychiatrists that worked with the twins.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2022, on September 16th, so a little over a month ago, there was a movie that was released called The Silent Twins. The twins were played by Tamara Lawrence as Jennifer, and Leticia Wright as June. Leticia plays Shuri in Black Panther.
Oh, okay.
Or Suri. Did I say that wrong? Suri.
I know what you meant.
Yeah, so it looks interesting. I watched the trailer and really enjoyed it, and I would like to watch the movie. So if
For
you guys
sure.
are interested, go watch it.
I wonder
It's
how much of their story they actually tell, because
a
that was a
lot.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested though. It's not like you can rent it on like YouTube and Apple TV, but it's like $20 right now. So I don't know if it's playing in theaters or not. I didn't look that far into it, but
Okay, I'm sure we can find it somewhere.
yeah. So that, Miles, is the story of June and Jennifer, the silent twins.
Man, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's quite a story. That was a good
Right?
story.
And the fact that that's a true story.
Yeah,
What the heck, man?
because it seems like one of those things that you could definitely make a fictional story about, but
Yeah.
nope, that happened, and that's
Right?
kind of unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
Can't imagine what it would be like to be around those silent twins who just look like zombies. I mean, good for that Lance kid for sticking up for them and everything during that whole thing. But it's like, how would you react?
I don't know. I feel for her or for their family,
Oh, for sure.
and just the hell they went through. It's like you don't even realize. You don't realize like what kind of effect you can have on people when you are silent.
Yeah.
But it's almost worse than if they weren't there, because if they weren't there, they could move on. Like, let's say that these twins at 8, instead of making a pact, they were killed in a freak accident or something.
Right.
The family could grieve and then make peace with it and then move on. But because they were silent and still living, they kept trying and hoping that they would return to normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that was almost worse torture, I think, than
Yeah.
if something were to have happened to them.
Yeah. I mean, neither is a good scenario, but
Right.
yeah, no, I get exactly where you're coming from. That'd be so frustrating.
Right.
Like, just feeling, I don't know, I'm thinking more from the parents' perspective, like how frustrating that would be. Not necessarily toward the frustration towards them, but internally.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Like, what did I do wrong? What could have I done better?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. And that would frustrate me at least. But
I just feel like when they made that pact with each other to not talk, they really just locked their minds in a cage because they hated it.
Mm-hmm.
They hated living like that, clearly, but then they couldn't move on from it.
Which is weird. That's another thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around. Have you ever tried to be silent for an extended period of time?
You know me, Miles.
Yeah.
I've tried many a times.
You have to.
I
you
have
to speak.
failed after like 30 minutes. I can't.
Yeah. I know for me, so, I mean, more better than anyone that when I'm in a bad mood, I go silent. I go completely.
And it's hell.
Like, don't talk to me.
I'm just kidding.
Like, even at work, when people notice that I'm not really speaking to anyone, like, oh, something's wrong with Miles. Better keep our distance.
Yep.
I don't know, but even when I am in a bad mood, I find it extremely difficult to stay silent, to not say a word to anyone. And I think part of that is because, like, even though I'm upset, and even if it's the person that I'm upset at, if they ask me a question, I almost feel obliged to answer it. Obligated, I mean, to answer it.
Right. Well, it's like you have to crack eventually. It's just human nature.
I know. And so that's why I'm saying is, like, the tenacity these girls had, how stubborn they were to not open their mouths.
I don't know. There is definitely something wrong with them because that is not normal.
Because, I mean, in class, can you picture your teacher asking you a question, you directly, and you're just, like, looking at them, dead stare.
Or not looking at them.
Or not looking at them.
Acting like you never even heard them.
Yeah. I feel like there are a lot of earlier signs that they should have probably been.
Yep.
I don't know.
All right. Anyway.
Well, hey, thanks for that story.
Yeah.
Thanks for your hard work on the research. That was really good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've always been interested in this story, and even knowing what I did know about it, I did not expect their 18th year and how chaotic that was. Because,
right.
What the heck? But yeah, thank you everyone for listening and for tuning in. Stay tuned for episodes 10 and 11 next week. For anybody who is looking for more content from us, we do have our Instagram page, Damily Podcast. We are working on getting our YouTube channel set up where we are going to be posting the episodes so that if you prefer YouTube as a platform, you can listen to us there. We'll let you guys know when that is available.
Mm-hmm. And also, don't forget to send in your own family stories to our email, famdamilypodcast@gmail.com.
We're going to do a listeners episode on the 1st of every month.
First of every month.
And we are very excited. It's going to be very fun hearing your guys' cuckoo family stories. Or fantastic. Who am I to make that decision?
Right. We'll leave that up to you.
All right. Let's go to bed, Miles.
Let's go to bed. And everyone, remember, don't sweat the petty things and don't pet the sweaty things.